Welcome to r/payback.
Hey everyone! So, this happened a few years ago, and I still can't believe it's real. And people lost their minds. So I figured I'd share the full story here. Buckle up, because it's equal parts disgusting, unbelievable, and 100% true. Now, we've all had bad days, right? Maybe your car breaks down. Maybe you spill coffee on your laptop. But I promise you, nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to the horror that unfolded in my old farmhouse one fateful night. Let me put it this way. Have you ever smelled something so bad that it made you question your very will to live? Have you ever looked at your ceiling and thought, that spot wasn't there yesterday, was it? Yeah, it gets that bad. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I'm taking you on the full journey. The mice, the mess, and the madness. This story has it all. And trust me, by the end, you're going to check your attic, or at least light a candle. So sit back, maybe don't eat anything right now, and let me tell you what went down. So, a little context. I used to live in this old farmhouse out in the country. It had charm. You know, creaky floors, drafty windows. Those kind of character-building flaws that you romanticize until you actually live with them. I moved in because it was cheap and peaceful, and I thought, how bad can it be? Famous last words. From the very first week I noticed, we weren't alone. Little scratching sounds in the walls, tiny droppings in the kitchen drawers, and those tiny beady-eyed intruders? Mice. Not just a couple. I'm talking about a neighborhood of mice. It was like Disney's Cinderella, but instead of sewing dresses, these guys were chewing through cereal boxes and nesting in my socks. I tried everything. Traps? They just ate the peanut butter and walked away laughing. Poison? Didn't even dent the population. I even brought in a cat from a friend. The cat stared at a mouse once, then went back to napping like it wasn't paid to care. Useless. Eventually, I just got used to it. Kind of. But things started getting weirder. I'd hear running in the attic. Fast, frantic, like a little stampede. Sometimes at night, I swore I saw shadows dart across the hallway. It was creepy, but still manageable. Until that night. It started like any other night. I made a quick dinner, watched a bit of TV, then headed upstairs to get ready for bed. It was one of those calm, quiet evenings where nothing really stands out, which, in hindsight, should have been my first clue. Peace and quiet in that house? That was suspicious. As I brushed my teeth, I heard it. The now familiar scratching above the ceiling. I rolled my eyes, spitting into the sink. You again? I muttered. Just mice, doing their nightly mouse Olympics. Annoying, yes, but at this point, I was practically roommates with them. Then came a sound I hadn't heard before, a sort of wet thud, followed by nothing, silence. You know that weird kind of silence where your ears start ringing because it's just too quiet? Yeah, that. I paused, waited, shrugged. Probably a mouse that misjudged a jump, I thought. Serves him right. I got into bed, pulled the covers up, and scrolled on my phone for a bit. The house creaked like it always did. The wind brushed against the old windows, and eventually I drifted off to sleep. But in the back of my mind, somewhere behind the sleepiness, something felt off. I just didn't know it yet. The real horror was already unfolding above me. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, groggy and barely functioning. You know that half-conscious shuffle where your eyes are open, but your brain's still snoozing. That was me. I slid out of bed like a slug, not out of motivation but sheer caffeine desperation. I trudged downstairs in my hoodie and socks, rubbing my eyes. The kitchen lights were still dim. I never bothered replacing the flickering overhead bulb, but I knew the layout well enough. I reached for my mug, filled the kettle, and hit the power button without looking. Auto mode, like a zombie. My focus was singular. Coffee. Everything else? A blur. Dishes from the night before were still in the sink, a cluttered mess I had no intention of addressing at that hour. I reached into the water blindly, feeling around for the last used tea bag I'd left to soak. It was part of my half-asleep ritual. Clean the mug, make the brew, survive the morning. The smell in the kitchen was off, faintly sour, but I chalked it up to the trash can needing to be taken out. Maybe old food, maybe spoiled milk. My brain filed it under future me's problem and moved on. Then I reached deeper into the sink, and that's when everything started to go sideways. I was still half asleep, one hand holding my chipped I Hate Mondays mug, the other plunging into lukewarm dishwater. I felt around the bottom of the sink for that soggy tea bag, fingers grazing over spoons, a sponge, and then something. Software squishy, but with a bit of resistance. My brain tried to rationalize. Old sponge? Nope, not the right shape. A chunk of bread? Too dense. It was roundish, damp, slimy. My thumb pressed in and pop. A tiny jet of foul-smelling liquid squirted upward, hitting my wrist. I jerked back instinctively, dropping the thing back into the sink with a splash. Instantly, a wave of stench hit me. Not just something's gone bad in the fridge kind of stench. This was death. Rotting, wet, biohazard-level foulness that made the back of my throat clench. I gagged. I turned on the faucet full blast, grabbed the sink sprayer, and rinsed the water away. That's when I saw it, spinning slowly near the drain. A soaked, bloated, partially decomposed mouse. Bits of fur clung to its body. Its tiny legs were stiff. One eyeball was gone. I screamed, like, really screamed. The kind of scream that only comes out when your brain short-circuits and your body tries to eject your soul. I stumbled backward, hitting the counter, hand still dripping with whatever awful fluid had come from that poor, rotting rodent. I could feel it on my skin. Oily, sticky, wrong. I backed into the wall, breathing hard, half laughing, half crying. My stomach churned. I was seconds away from vomiting. The worst part? In that split second before the smell hit, I'd actually thought, that feels weird. As if I'd been inspecting it. I squeezed it. I touched a dead mouse with my bare hand and squeezed it, and it squirted. My brain shorted out. I ran to the bathroom like a man possessed, nearly slipping on the hardwood. I scrubbed my hands with soap, then dish soap, then hand sanitizer, then more soap. I didn't care that my skin was going raw. I wanted it off. The smell had burrowed into my pores, into my memory. It clung to me like guilt. I leaned over the sink, shaking, trying to breathe. But every time I inhaled, the ghost of that rancid stench came back. It was in my nostrils, in my mind. I dry heaved twice, then spat like it would help get the memory out of my mouth. Back in the kitchen, the mouse was still in the sink, floating like a warning from the underworld. I couldn't look at it. I threw a towel over it, as if it would make it disappear. Panic set in. What if that liquid had gotten in a cut? Could I get a disease from this? I touched it, squeezed it. Some of it got on my lips. Oh God. Was I going to die? Did I just absorb plague juice? I grabbed my phone and Googled, hands still damp. Dead mouse bacteria sink hand contact. The results were worse than I expected. Hantavirus, salmonella, leptospirosis. There were lists. Lists of things that could kill me because I touched a decomposing mouse before caffeine. My heart was pounding. I called my friend, a nurse, and word vomited the whole story while pacing the living room. She was silent for a second, then said, "Okay, that's disgusting. But you're probably not dying. Wash your hands. Maybe call your doctor just to be safe." That probably didn't help. I spent the next 2 hours spiraling. Every itch on my skin was a symptom. Every stomach grumble was organ failure. It wasn't just gross anymore. It was existential. All from a single soggy corpse in a sink. The rest of that day was a blur of stomach cramps, dry mouth, and pure, uncut anxiety. Every weird sensation in my body became a symptom. A little nausea. Clearly the mouse juice was eating through my stomach lining. A cramp. Internal hemorrhaging. My mind was running through every disease I'd read about on Google like a greatest hits list of panic. I couldn't eat. Even the thought of food made me gag. The kitchen had become a war zone. I avoided it entirely. I ordered takeout, then couldn't bring myself to eat it. I kept checking my reflection to see if I was turning pale. I was, but probably from stress. I tried to distract myself. I put on a stand-up special. Usually I love comedy, but even the best jokes felt like background noise behind the echo of that awful pop in my memory. I called friends and told them the story, hoping they'd laugh and snap me out of it. Most just screamed or said, "Oh my God, are you serious?" One friend tried to lighten the mood with, "Well, hey, at least you didn't need it." That actually didn't help. I couldn't sit still. I paced. I Googled again. I checked my hands under different lights to see if they looked infected. I washed them at least 15 times that day. My skin felt like sandpaper. Every creak in the house made me jump. I kept glancing toward the kitchen like it was haunted, which, to be fair, it kind of was. The mouse was gone. I'd finally scraped it into a trash bag with a spatula I later threw away. But the idea of it lingered. It felt like my house had betrayed me. And my own body wasn't exactly being reassuring either. That night was brutal. I tried going to bed early, thinking maybe I just needed rest. A reset. But the moment my head hit the pillow, my mind turned on like a horror movie projector. I couldn't stop replaying it. The texture, the resistance, the squish. The smell. My hand in that water, like I'd willingly reached into a swamp of death. Every time I closed my eyes, the scene replayed in full detail, except somehow worse. One nightmare had the mouse opening its eyes and talking to me. Another had it multiplying. A sink full of bloated floating corpses, bobbing like apples in a Halloween game from hell. I tossed and turned for hours, switching positions like it would help. I tried breathing exercises, ASMR videos, even meditation. Nothing worked. The more I tried to calm myself, the more the thoughts snuck in. What if I had absorbed some weird bacteria? What if I went to sleep and just didn't wake up? Even the sound of the wind outside felt sinister. Every tiny ache in my body sent me into a tailspin of worry. Eventually, I drifted off, probably from sheer exhaustion. But even then, it wasn't restful. I woke up several times, sweating. My sheets twisted like I'd been fighting off demons in my sleep. In a way, I kinda had. The next morning, I woke up with a dull headache, a stiff neck, and a strange combination of relief and lingering dread. I had survived the night. That alone felt like a win. My stomach still felt a little weird. Not painful, just unsettled. But compared to the spiral I'd gone through the day before, It was tolerable. No new symptoms. No fever. I took that as a cautiously good sign. Still, I wasn't about to celebrate. I moved through the house slowly, like it might jump me again. I eyed every dark corner, every sound, every drawer I opened. When I made coffee, I triple-checked the mug and washed it twice. I sniffed the sink like a paranoid bloodhound. But as the morning went on, something shifted. I started to laugh at how ridiculous it all was. I'd touched a dead mouse, yes, but I'd also managed to turn it into a full-blown apocalyptic event in my head. I had turned my kitchen into a trauma site and myself into patient zero. Looking back, though, the lesson was painfully clear. Pay attention. And if you've got a mouse problem, don't just accept it as part of the house's charm. Call someone. Do something. Because if you don't, you might end up unknowingly squeezing a decomposed rodent before your first cup of coffee. Not exactly the kind of wake-up call anyone wants. So yeah, that was my accidental mouse massage story. Gross? Absolutely. Traumatizing? Without a doubt. But you know what? It taught me a few things. First, never ever reach into a murky sink without knowing what's in it. That's basic survival, and I failed. Second, mice are not cute when they die in your kitchen. Third, if you think your pest problem is just a nuisance, it's only one surprise corpse away from becoming a crisis. In the weirdest way, I'm kinda grateful it happened. Not in a let's do it again kind of way, but in a I'll never be that careless again kind of way. Plus, I've got a story now. A horrible, hilarious, unforgettable story. And judging by how my friends reacted, it's one for the ages. To anyone listening, take care of your homes. Keep them clean. Set traps. Seal holes. And for the love of everything holy, don't be like me. Don't fish around blindly in a sink that smells like doom. Have you had something like this happen? Please, please tell me I'm not the only one. Misery loves company. And apparently, so do dead mice. Stay safe out there. Check your sinks. Hug your pets. And if you ever feel a weird squish under your fingers, maybe just stop and look first.
That wraps up today's episode of r/payback. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories.